Hello all, a very good afternoon, and myself Ekta Dubey, and on behalf of the Brinalytics team and our partner Avaya India, we welcome you all and thank you for being part of a roundtable Design Thinking in CX in E-commerce. So before we start a roundtable, there are a few guidelines that I would quickly like to highlight and make you people aware of. Requesting all the attendees to be on mute when the speakers are taking the session. We'll have a Q&A, of course, after each session. And when the roundtable goes on, we have speakers who have joined us. So we have a chat box where you can put your questions in the chat and we would take it from there to our speakers. You can introduce yourself on the chat box itself and put your questions. So to start with, first, I would like to introduce our title partner, Avaya India. Businesses are built on the experiences they provide, and every day, millions of those experiences are built by Avaya. For over 100 years, they have enabled organizations around the globe to win by creating intelligent communication experiences for customers and employees. Avaya builds open, converged, and innovative solutions to enhance and simplify communication and collaborations in the cloud, on premise, or a hybrid of both. To grow your business, they are committed to innovation, partnerships, and a relentless focus on what's next. They are the technology company that you can trust to help you deliver experience that matter. A little brief about why we are together here today. So it has been wisely said that if you need to create a successful business, don't sell a product but sell a solution to a problem. And exactly, the e-commerce seems to be doing just that with the advent of COVID-19. The entire e commerce business has become more demanding, with customers looking for a seamless buying experience. Delighting these customers has become an increasingly tough job, which has led to the entry of design thinking in e-commerce arena. The roundtable today will be focusing on strategies to improve user experience with design thinking and CX transformation, how design thinking is used to understand the user and the customer experience, understanding the key strategies and tool for incorporating design thinking into a creative process. And now, to start with the first session, I would like to invite a keynote speaker, Abhishek Gupta, and to speak about him, Abhishek Gupta is from Avaya. He is skilled at conceptualizing and devising digital transformation strategies in the space of customer experience and business automation. He has rich 14 years of experience in the industry and has played various roles associated to the customer service industry. He is with Avaya since 10 years and enjoys envisaging disruptive technologies such as AI and ML. Over to you, Abhishek, to start your session, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Good evening and good afternoon, everyone. Let me quickly share the presentation. Let me know if you can see it.
Yes, Abhishek.
All right. Thank you. So hi, everyone. This is Abhishek. And for next 20 minutes, I will talk about how Avaya is helping the e-commerce customers today to build their great strategy for their brands, right? No doubt, customer experience plays a critical role today when it comes to customer journey. Right from when the customer installs the application on his phone, visits the store, or maybe asks for a support, maybe raise a ticket for refund or return, right? Everywhere, all the touch points make a deep impact on the overall journey. Now let's talk about three of the key trends which we see are the major ones and the impacting ones to the customer experience today. The first most and the foremost is the necessity of omni-channel presence and omni-channel supports. Today, customers are everywhere. As a brand, we need to be there where the customers are present, and that focuses a lot of pressure on the organizations and brands to provide the same level of service what they have been providing on their apps, on their web portals, or through the contact centers, right? Customers expect very smooth interactions across all the channels, whether it is social or it's voice, across all the devices. Another important one is the need of extensive personalization today. According to the survey, 78% of customers today ignore offers which are not personalized or not based on the previous engagement with the brands. What they want is the next level of support, which is 24/7 available to them, very highly responsive, and allow them to solve 100% of their queries using self-service with the choice of their channel. With so much happening around us, brands need a CX framework which offers tools and applications to enable, design, and create hyper personalized experiences for all different channels and mediums. A framework which allows brands to compose hyper personalized experiences for each segment of the buyer journey, be it the awareness, research, the consideration phase, the purchase phase, after sales support, or loyalty. Customer requires the same level of assistance, same level of features available to them across the journey. At Avaya, we believe the framework must offer tools and applications which should be programmable so that they are become extensible as a framework to the and embedded can be embedded into the workflows of the various applications today. It should be contextual and it should be persistent so that the journeys can be maintained across the devices and across the channels. It should offer and leverage artificial intelligence capabilities to optimize the entire process and shorten the deployment time. We'll talk about a few of these such applications from Avaya in the coming slides. Now let's focus on three important aspects today where Avaya really supports brands like yours to build their next generation customer experience. We'll talk about conversational commerce, the omni-channel live assist, and the next generation self-service. We'll see how the modern technologies like NLP, NLU, computer visions are impacting the customer experience. The results are astonishing as it helps businesses to create the engagement with customers, reduce frustrations from long holds, and enable them to solve very complex issues using the self-service itself. Not only that, it helps customers to accelerate the engagement process to enable more retention from their end customers, hence to build the loyalty over the period of time. Let's begin with the first solution from Avaya, which is conversational commerce. Conversational commerce is primarily a combination of digital, social, and voice commerce. It allows brands to envisage, design, and execute experiences for different segment of customer journey, for different personas, for different interfaces and channels. Avaya offer tools and applications today to create these experiences for visual channels like brand apps, social channels, voice interfaces like speech enabled IVRs, voice assistant embedded in the apps. In the awareness phase, we can help customers to push content for their brand for various latest promotions. We can help the building the personal shopping assistant for the brands to assist their customers in the shopping phase itself. We can help them doing the payment gateway integration to enable purchase directly without leaving the interface of the conversational commerce. We can enable them with the after sales support assistant, customer support assistant, where with the live agent or a bot can be really helpful to the end customer to solve the queries. And at the last, in the loyalty phase, we can help to outreach the customers with the surveys, feedback forms, and various other things to automate the processes. And this can happen across the channels. Today, the conversational commerce turns the buying journey into a two-way communication rather than a one-way promotional messages we used to get through the enterprises or the commercial companies over SMS as a channel. For example, personal shopping assistant can help customers in research. In consideration segment of the journey, the support assistant can help them deliver the replacement orders, find out the delivery status, and things like that. It can help them to inquire about the prices and the product features. Now let's talk about one of the aspects of the conversational commerce called social commerce. Social commerce is a combination of offering all the capabilities to the customer on the social channels. It should be context driven. It should leverage natural language processing and natural language understanding and smart options to enable customers to transact directly with the brands without leaving the interfaces. With the right tools and applications, we can do that. Let's see example. Brands now can compose their different CX for different channels, be it SMS, social messaging, or brand's own app, or WhatsApp as a channel, and designed ones and use it across the channels. Now, this is very powerful for any organization because not only it saves time, but it gives a kind of experience, seamless experience across different channels. And since this is reusable, because it's all built over templates, It can be reusable and provide and save lots of time for the end customers. Today, the voice technology has become integral part of our lives, right from using it for paying our favorite music track, switching on lights, to ordering the product online. According to Juniper Research, voice commerce will be forecasted to close to around US dollar 80 billion by 2023. It is going to revolutionize the commercial world. Voice commerce, along with the digital commerce, will complete the entire purchase process for the guest, for the user, at ease. Starting from searching the product to arranging a callback from the customer, voice can become a prominent interface to interact with brands. Couple of most voice commerce use cases not only includes the voice biometric, which allows authentication of the callers using voice search capabilities embedded in the apps, which allows customers to search the product using within the apps or through the portal, or a voice assistant, which helps the customer to close the purchase, connect to the agents, and much more. Today, Avaya has capabilities and ecosystem of partners which allows this to happen. We support today more than 20 plus languages, Indian languages, and we have domain trained bots available not only on the chat, on the text, but also on the voice. We support voice biometric authentication as a technology to authenticate the customers. Whenever they call up the contact center, they can be authenticated using their voice. And we can use these authentication for various different workflows, right? These are all modules which can be embedded into the workflows. And we can also leverage text to speech as a capability today to transcribe the data or to do the real-time transcription. At Avaya, we believe the tools are built on no code and low code principles and offers visual designers to compose experiences for self-service journeys for different channels, be it SMS, social, or any other digital channel. Automation is necessary. However, human touch can't be left untouched as part of the overall CX strategy for customer journey. Certain scenarios demand direct touch and require utmost focus to deliver customer delight. With traditional way of connecting customers to the agent, brands will not be able to match the customer expectation, which were composed during the using the conversational commerce driven by AI ML. We need to leverage similar capabilities of artificial intelligence and machine learning when it comes to finding the right agent for the right customers. This approach is based on matching the customer and the agent based on some predefined attributes like age, location, previous interaction, or any other custom parameter which can be pulled in from the CRM application. Now, this helps creating unforgettable experiences for the end customers. Brand must leverage few of the AI capabilities to assist the agents to perform much better. For example, with voice biometric, agent no need to ask customer authentication. It saves lots of average handle time for the customers. With real-time transcription, agents no need to take the manual notes of the call. It can be transcribed automatically and stored in the database for later analysis. And it reduces the agent burnout as well. With text-to-speech analytics and the speech analytics, organizations can listen to the voice of customers and strive for better quality to drive and elevate customer experiences and loyalty. Now, if you visualize overall picture, with Avaya, brands can visualize, compose, and automate up to 80% of the workflows across the channels and accelerate the customer engagement. With that, let's have a look one of the use cases today. This use case is primarily about organization who want to promote a product using social media. So this talks about the entire phase of a customer journey, starting from a social promotion till the time product is bought by the customer and he extends the warranty. Now, customer starts engaging with the social bot. Now, overall use case is divided into 3 sections. Start with the product promotion on the Facebook, which is primarily the awareness piece, consideration piece, and the purchase phase. Customer move to the after sales after purchasing the product, wherein customer wants to redeem his loyalty points against his installation charges. And the last one is wherein customer extends wants to extend his warranty services. Let's talk about the phase one, the phase where the promotion was shown to the customer for a home cinema system, and the customer has actually purchased it. In this phase, if you see, customer starts engaging with social bot powered by knowledge management on Facebook as a channel. Move to a live agent for getting the product availability over chat, and end up completing the purchase with the chat interface itself. At the end, customer feedback was pushed by the bot to gather the experiences score. In overall cycle, customer journey didn't break, and the context was always maintained and used. If you see the overall cycle, there are multiple channels used here. We started from Facebook as a channel, moved to a chat interface with the agent, and then transfer the chat to the supervisor with all the knowledge integration popping up on his desktop, and then pushing up the feedback. It could be a call, it could be a form, or it could be a SMS link. So the highlight here is the customer journey didn't break in the overall cycle, and we maintained the entire context wherever the customer was going. So it helped us, the agents, to talk to the customer more effectively. The second piece is the after sales piece. Once the customer bought the product, in this after sales segment of the journey, customer received the home installation offer over WhatsApp. Now on WhatsApp, customer has an option to send 1, 2, and 3 as buttons. So let's say that he sends 1 to get a callback offer from the live agent from the business. Now he receives an auto callback, and he completes the process. The entire journey was planned and composed beforehand and executed seamlessly across channels and interfaces. Now, this is the power of building or composing the experiences using such kind of tools. We are talking about starting from a WhatsApp channel, calling up the callback application, connecting to a live agent, and closing the deal. The last one is the loyalty piece. In the last leg, the customer got various options to interact with customer service to extend the warranty. He can choose to use visual self-service to do that, or he can use voice-based self-service, or a combination of both. He can call up the contact center, interact with the bot, voice bot, and do that. He can do that through a WhatsApp as a channel, or he can do that through the web portal also. In overall, we can embed the various pieces like voice biometric, guided self-service across these channels to successfully create the request of warranty extensions. In summary, brands today needs to prepare for all the channels where customers are present. They need to be proactive. They need to inform customers about everything earlier. They need to create hyper-personalized offers today, and leverage AI for automating workflows. They should listen and act in real time to drive customer delight, and must strive right balance between the automation and the human intervention. With that, I want to close my slides. I'll be there. Please put your questions on chat if you have any. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Abhishek, for sharing your insights. It was great. So, any questions related to what Abhishek had shared about Avaya's solution, please put your question in the chat box and he'll take it from there. Yes, thank you. Now, we are going to move to a very interesting session, that's a round table. So, the discussion basically is on the art and science of e-commerce, CX by design, and I have along with me Mr. Bhavesh Shora, sales engineering leader with Avaya. And to speak about him, he has 20 years of working experience in enterprise communication, contact center in various roles, including solution architecting, sales, project management, and service delivery, and is presently working with Avaya from last 7 years. So now the process would be that I would be taking one by one questions, and then accordingly with the area of interest that the speakers have highlighted, I would take out your name, address you, and then you can come forward and share your insights. I hope that's clear. Yeah. So Bhavesh, can I start with the session?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure, Ekta. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank
Yes.
you, Bhavesh. Yes, thank
Thank
you,
you so
Bhavesh.
much. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Yes.
So we have a first question that we're going to focus on is the concept of design thinking, like how it is applied in the product tech companies and how design thinking is used to understand user and customer experience. So this is the prime question that I would like to invite. First is Achyut Sharma, lead user researcher with Mesho, to share his insights on this topic. Over to you, Achyut, to share your thoughts.
Hi, this is Achita. So yeah, I think design thinking has been interpreted in different ways, and it has been applied not only in product tech but many companies. And you must have heard several consulting companies. But I think the genesis of design thinking, although been more westernized from what we understand, the IDEO methodology of ideate, prototype, and all those things. I think in India it always existed. Design thinking is not one way. There are several ways of thinking, and we see that evidence across in India at even grassroots level of how people think and how they understand the problem and how they solve for it. So I think one of the key aspects in design thinking, and I think more and more understanding has been developed, especially in the product tech space, is that instead of arriving at a solution very quickly and prototyping it, the process is much more important to first define the problem, understand the problem. And I think understanding the problem, defining the problem is far more difficult, and finding the right kind of problem to solve for is far more difficult than solving for it. I think solutions and solving for it is much more plausible, but I think finding and defining the problem becomes far more tougher. So I think that's where design thinking plays a very critical part. And I would go on to say, with our experience in the social sector, which I've had for many years, to even in Misho, I think design thinking broadly, as we understand, is first understanding and defining the problem. And I think that's where user research plays a very critical part in building depth of understanding our users. For example, in Misho, we are working with rural and semi-urban users, right, which are the billion users, and it's very complex, it's very ambiguous. So understanding that, defining what problems they have, what needs they have, is very, very important. And that's where design thinking at some level is shaped. But I'm happy to expand that, but would allow some other speakers to also sort of chime in and give their point of view.
Yes, Achyut, you'll be here and we'll be covering few more points on this point and then you can share your thoughts on this. So now the next, Himanshu Gupta, the head of design with PharmEasy. Himanshu, since you selected this particular aspect that you would want to share your points on this. So what are your thoughts on this? I think you are on mute, Himanshu, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, I was.
Yes, yes.
Yes, thanks, Ekta, and everyone having me here. I believe pretty much the philosophy of design thinking is covered by Achutya. And how I look at it is one needs to understand business needs and goals and put user in the center to design a solution, right? Is it's all about design thinking. Definitely it starts from empathizing, defining the problem, understanding it really well, and then start ideating, prototyping, test. It's a process how we see it at PharmEasy and our suite of products. It's a process of solving and prioritizing customer needs, right, above everything else. To give everyone an example, right, how design looking user at a center, right, how is it different? So for example, a local grocery store builds an app to grow their business by, let's say, X percentage in their neighborhood or locality. This is a business goal, right? But when you look at from a user point of view, you are creating an application for the consumers to conveniently buy products online from their local grocery store. So I believe this is something which design thinking brings in this entire product building process. uh, 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 so few focus area I would just touch base on a high level, which are new user experience. So when you are working on these areas, you need to focus on this. Second is engagement. Uh, uh, Engaging with the consumers mean hitting on the right product recommendation or reward programs. For example, at PharmEasy, we created user specific personalized therapy based solutions, for example, for diabetic users and different users who are facing chronic disorder. The third area is the key area here is the retention, right? How you are using your design thinking to boil down to customer satisfaction. Uh, 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 and to summarize this up, I believe there are three key things which helps design thinking to improve the e-commerce experiences. First is content-centric design and experience, right? Very much specific to understanding your user base. A time-saving design element helping user to transact fast, reach to their desirable or need-based product or the service, how this experience should be. And like I mentioned in one of my examples, creating smart and personalized user experiences will help design team to move it forward. That's
Sure.
that.
I'll just sort of add in here an interesting element. I think some of the genesis of design thinking is very very simple, and I would look at it in three parts. One is understanding the problem, right, which is analysis. The second is around lateral thinking, right? How do you think in different directions? And the third is imagination. Do you have the ability to imagine, right? How do you sort of think through this problem? So I think design thinking has these fundamental sort of competencies or areas of skills which you need to sort of hone up. So that is one. Second is, I think design thinking is very misconstrued here. Currently, if you see a lot of design thinking workshops, if you have attended, right, one of the biggest learning has been that it has been simplified. It has been reduced in a way where it seems that you can do it in 2 hours and you will, have a eureka idea. That is absolute untrue. That just doesn't work. It requires hours of research, many days of research, or many hours of brainstorming to even understand and define the problem. And I think this is the biggest misconception of design thinking, that it can be packaged and consumed like a sort of a 5-minute McDonald's burger. So I think that is something which we all need to unlearn. That is one. Second is, if you have to really think about the problem, especially for Indian users in e-commerce, when we talk about CX, right, customer experience, why do you think there are so many problems, right? There are so many issues which come up with customer experience because India is extremely diverse. Our users are very diverse. So how do you understand them? So I'll give you an example in Meesho, right? We started before we sort of made a vision change, right, in our business since we turned unicorn. But before that, we focused on women entrepreneurs, right? How women can build their businesses. And simplifying and just understanding women what they need is not enough. We had to understand the socio-cultural context, where they come from, what are their needs, what are the problems, and those also go beyond what they're doing with the app. Your data and all these customization of data and AI and automation will never give you an idea of how women start with negotiating and getting permission to even access a smartphone. Many of our women users had only two apps when they managed to get a smartphone, which was WhatsApp and Meesho. So some of their fundamental digital proficiencies came by using Meesho app. So how do you understand your user? How do you understand your customer? Is very, very important and also very, very complex. So I think this is very important. So some of the presentation which I saw, like personal shopping assistant, conversational commerce. I mean, these are great buzzwords. But how do you apply this for our complex users, especially in rural semi-urban? I can give you an example. We just did a vernacular research now, and you can't even use plain, Hindi translation. You have to do transliteration someplace places. You cannot literally translate a word. You need to have alternative translation. So voice assistant, yes, it's very helpful, but there are many other things where we have to have a more nuanced, more innovative approach, and which is where design thinking and CX has to come together in the context of e-commerce.
True.
Yes.
Completely agree. I just to add one last thing, what Achutya said. It's an iterative process, right? It cannot be done in an hour or 2 hour. You cannot learn it. You need to do a good amount of research, understanding from which environment all these users are coming from, right? It relies on observing with empathy and how people are interacting within their environments instead of just understanding the okay, these are the personas and let's go about it, and these are the tools they use. It's way more than that. True.
Yes. Thank you, Imanshu and Achyut, for sharing your thoughts. Now, I would like to invite on similar question, Harmin Singh, Director of Creative Design from PhonePe, to share your thoughts on the concept of design thinking and how do we understand user and customer experience, how design. Over to you, Harmin.
Thank you, Ekta. First of all, design thinking is actually a process when you actually have a, problem in place and you already are going to find or seek a solution, right? Uh, but I always take a step back personally and have learned this over the experience over the years. That it's important to take a longer curve. Like as you said, it's not a couple of hours job. It takes time, it takes a ton of research, whether it's a qualitative, quantitative research. Uh, it takes immense amount of understanding of users, personas, uh, who you are really solving for, etc. Right? In that process, what has over the time have has become when we are sitting in confined to four walls and thinking about our users, our audience, right? And we all talking about heightening the customer experience, and we think that during the sessions, during the design thinking sessions, whether we are following the idea rules, there are ton of other ways to there are ton of exercises you can perform to arrive at solutions. uh, we think that we will be able to solve the problem, but that's not usually the case. Basically, you are actually finding the solutions to experiment, not to release, right? You're finding solutions to experiment, done the testing, drive the validation, and still have to rely on the users that when they use it, how they behave. And and that's very important. And then you can only do that if you understand and improve the outer ecosystem, which is outside the product. Because person who is driving the session on the product, which is drive, for example, if a person is firing up an app, that person has actually traveled from a thought from A to B to take a decision to fire up an app, for example, right? And and over there, if brands and products are not taking care of the outside ecosystem, take care of the outside ecosystem where they can also provide heightened experience, customer experience. I think that's where a lot of brands are currently failing. So if you have an understanding and if you start your process outside the ecosystem, that before a person drives a session and what makes a person to drive a particular fire up your app, you are already setting a certain experience and certain mindset for a user, what to expect when they fire up an app. And that's how you also improve the discovery of the product and also add value in their mind and reason to believe, propositions in their mind, that while they're discovering, their transaction behavior or transaction understanding becomes much easier, because they already have pre-learned before firing up the app. And also, once they have done the transaction, it's important that uh, that's where not the that's when the story ends, right? And it's the edge cases, like what happens and how you help them to start the loop again and keep them engaged. And to drive a standardized customer experience, now through the different domains and channels, whether it's through brand marketing, growth marketing, your own channels, the product, user interface, or uh, tactical places like social media, and we are using chat formats, or people are searching you, or the offerings you're giving on Quora, or discussing with the friends on the WhatsApp. If you kind of deep dive into each behavior outside the ecosystem, I think you will always have a better strategy while you sit on the table performing a design thinking sessions. If you have insights from outer ecosystem, I think you will always have a better solution in the end. But there are ton of ways, I said, to exercise this, and there can't be one way to do this. It depends on the problem you're solving at the particular moment.
Yes. Thank you, Harman, for sharing your insights. I would like Akanksha Bajaj, Business Development Head with OYO, She would be also sharing something on concept of design thinking and the importance of pre and post purchase e-commerce CX. So Akanksha, your thoughts. Thank
Yeah,
you for being
thank,
here.
yeah, thank you. Same here. Thanks, Ekta, for having me. And on the concept of thinking, I think already the speakers have spoken a lot. But I would just like to share my purview from OYO's perspective. Since post-COVID, we already know that yes, now whenever consumers are going and even customers are planning to move out, they are having a lot of concerns on their travel and where and how they are going to stay, how their stay will look like, and is it sanitized or not. So I think as the design thinking process is laid out, that we will have to first see empathize the customer, then we have to go to define idea and action. But I think the very first step here will be like are we actually able to understand where the customer is coming from. Then I think Oyo there realized the fact, and after doing that particular research within the persons who are actually willing to travel, we understood that yes, people are very much concerned on their safety part. So we launched the sanitized versions where the property owners who were having the properties had to sanitize, and also were supposed to get all their employees vaccinated. And even post that, they were supposed to maintain all the hygiene factors like thermal guns, sanitizers, and even the mask and everything. And they were ensuring each and everything. And at least I think the another bigger question, just by doing that particular part will not help us, right? We The other question that came up or is kind of coming up in the process is the content good enough, as in the the portal itself is having sufficient information or not. But yes, and then Oyo realized that yes, all the properties itself should also be having a tag of sanitization or the employees being vaccinated. So I think understanding the right set of things, as in terms of consumers, and also aligning that same path throughout is what is required when design thinking is there. And I think then you can tap on irrespective of any industry, I believe. So that was on, I think, the design thinking, and rest anyways everyone has already covered. Now talking about the pre and post purchase, I think before any purchase that the consumer is doing, right, he is moreover of this view that what does the brand offer, what's in there for me, and what are my options. And there the customer wants to know and have that build trust in that particular uh, product, right? And the pre-purchase design should definitely include all those things, uh, while coming to the post-purchase design. And apart from that, there should be other basic product specifications, like transaction policies and other things, which anyways is a part of the brand company, and how they are portraying is one of the very important thing, because then only the customer will be very much lucrative. It will find it quite lucrative to stay with it and close the offer. But the even more important part is the pre-purchase, because it's not we think that yes, the customer has come to this far and now it's done. But the repeat and the retention rate itself is the very very important factor when it comes to consumer journey, because we know that yes, the repetitive span is very less. People find it, even if they find one thing bad, they are not going to ever come back, right? So the communication should be extremely good. There should be a good hyper engagement and proactive solution. I think the team should be there or defined in a way where they can proactively reach out to all the customers and inform and provide all the information that should be there. And I think enhancing your support team in a way will definitely help uh, in this format. Yeah, that's that.
Thank you, Akanksha. Now, I would like, we have Vishal Kapoor, Chief Design Officer with Future Group, and he would be focusing on the focus of culture, design, and change by design, like the element of experience when it comes to online and offline instead of offline versus online. So, Vishal, since you selected this, what are your thoughts on this?
Thanks, Ekta. And I'm sorry I missed the first half of the session. Uh, I think I selected this because we are going through this right now. So nothing more, relevant to talk about, and nothing more real time to talk about, right? We being the one of the largest physical retailers, undergoing, typical business problems, uh, trying to, reduce that through the online, which actually has, sort of gone into quite a upscale in the last 1.5, 2 years of COVID, being further pushed by it. We were, I would say, not fully ready for it. We geared ourselves up in the last 1.5 years, and I would say we are doing pretty okay right now. I won't say great, but pretty okay right now. And I think one of the challenges we face and still keep on facing is this whole idea of what is this digital, and how is this digital person different from a physical person, right? Even in terms of pure talent. Uh, and in a company which has been so strong physically, suddenly to have this whole nomenclature around digital, the whole processor around digital, the whole the user interface, the marketing technology, everything around digital, it is a bit of a cultural challenge. And that's the, I think, shift which most of the businesses, and I won't count on a scale of how big they are, but I'm saying even from a small scale, a shopkeeper to a large physical retailer or a business house is undergoing the same problem, right? So it is a relevant problem. When I talk to the technology friends of mine, uh, who are very strong in what I call the declarative knowledge, because they come from a certain level of contextual intelligence, and we come from a different level of contextual intelligence, and we somehow never try to, each one tries to prove the other smarter, right? Other self smarter in comparison to the other. So I feel design plays a huge role there, because design is more a neutralizer, right? Because design doesn't run on an ego. And I'm talking genuine design. I'm not talking about a design process, or I'm not talking about pre-payment, post-payment. I'm talking about design as an ethos and design as a thought. And I think design actually plays that open-ended game and starts with the notion that I don't know, right? And moment I say I don't know, that means I've also had the humility to say that, less you know more than me, and I'm willing to learn. And I think that is such a great start when two bodies meet who are from two different worlds, and now they try to come together to bring out something better for the consumer, right? And that's where I think design thinking plays a huge role in the first level. The second level is that, as we know, our economy is going through a different kind of a phase right now, but consumption of certain products on the online are actually booming up. You see a lot of D2C brands in the last 2 years which have gone from 10 crores to 100 to 100 to 400 crores, right? So that means there is a certain demand in a certain segment which we call the white space, and that's where the challenger brands are coming on, right? That means that there was somebody who consciously or subconsciously got an insight that this is a problem. Because if you see, like an Oyo started by finding a problem, right? Oyo was not a designerly solution; it was a problem finding company, and that's why they grew on it. Similarly, most of our, if you look at Ola or Uber, it's based on a problem finding platform, right? And then we have these problem findings going into very special areas. Like, I don't get something for my child who is 4 years old as a skincare product, and suddenly something pops up, right? So the base idea again is very design driven, because it is about finding insights by observing deep into the market, by observing deep into the customer issues, and then finding out that there were these gaps, somewhere here or there. So what I'm trying to say, and I probably might elaborate more, is that when we talk about design thinking, it is not an exclusive agent. It is there in every aspect of what we do, except that it does not have a formal presence like marketing, or or a supply chain or things like that. But if you're able to, as a leader, bring up these aspects or these nuances of observation and these nuances of empathizing, I would say empathizing, or even being compassionate about what's around you, right? Especially with so much of COVID happening, the compassion becomes much more a stronger feature than empathy. Because I mean, I can, as a designer, I've been there for 30 years. I still don't think I can empathize fully with you, Ekta, as a user, because I've not led your life, right? And by doing an observational research for 10 hours or 10 days or even 10 months, I still will not empathize with you because I don't know you, right, to that much of extent. But definitely I can get some cues out of it through latent research, or through sort of underwritten research. So I think the bigger word thereby comes as compassion, which means, am I open to understand you, much before the empathy comes in. So if I'm able to build a compassionate culture within the organization, where every individual is able to, look at things around you, what happens when you go out, what happens when you go on the social media, what happens you go on screen and off screen, I think you start building the same cultural nuances both online and offline, right? We talk a lot about online because everything is within that 10 by 12 inch of screen or on your mobile phone, so thereby it's easier to catch. Offline it's a little difficult to catch nuances because you tend to get lost into the space. And I mean, I just came out of a meeting which was talking about operational inefficiencies, variations between an online and offline, and we felt culturally the online is much more operationally efficient compared to an online, because you are very focused on where your outcomes are going to be, where your results are going to be, what's your target customer, how you're going to reach him or her, etc., which in an offline is more of a guesswork. You put a hoarding, you guess, hopefully people will read. It's more an information based, right? So here the conversions are more direct, more specific, and more targeted compared to the offline. That's the cultural shift which actually is required, which means that as a human being, you need to be more objective in your outcome when you talk about online. Uh, but when you become so objective, you do not lose the subjectivity, because as a human being you still have subjectivity as a part of you, right? You are a human being operating behind a screen. You are a consumer buying behind a screen. You have your own life, right? You do something at 10 o'clock and you do something at 12 o'clock, and the moods and the rationals are still in your part of your life. So yes, you be objective in your in your customer understanding, but you do not take that objectivity as the sole outcome of your research, right? And that's where again design thinking comes in, because design thinking, my belief is, a much more 360-degree rounded approach to understanding a customer, more than a number or more than a economic value or a demographic value, right? So and if I have to know you, I have to know you more in terms of how you feel than what you purchase, because if I know you how you feel, I will know your purchase automatically, right? So I think the it's a very funny stage which most of us are going through, because I don't want to leave my behavioral science inform knowledge, and deep human knowledge behind. But at the same time, I want to be very rational about it. I want to be very objective about it, and I want to target the consumer like that. I want to do my social media campaigns around it. I want to do performance marketing around it. So I think it's going to be a very, very interesting merger of things. My personal belief, I might be wrong, is that in hopefully when COVID goes off, there would be a very healthy merger of offline and offline online. I don't see them competing at all. I see that merger happening, a hybrid happening, and I see that coming up in a very beautiful way. Hopefully in the next couple of years.
Yes.
And that's the new culture which we all will have to define for, because you can't throw away human beings behavior, and you can't throw away human beings rationality and irrationality. You have to merge them together, and that's where I think design thinking becomes very, very potent, more than any other subject.
Thank you, Vishal, for sharing interesting insights. So before we
Yeah,
move to the next question, Soumya Chopra, the head
I
of
think
CX.
Bhavesh has a point. Bhavesh
yeah,
was saying something.
Ekta, I just wanted to make a point. Yeah, I
Yes,
think we have
please.
got some great insights from Achyut of Misho, PharmEasy, Oyo, and even Future, and Herman Miller. I think maybe in the subsequent questions, I would like to hear something about I think design thinking is all about designing the product, maybe processes, trying to understand who's going to be the customer, user, everything. If we can, what percentage of time of design thinking is also spent into pure customer service? So like, as long as the process is running, it's fine. If something breaks, it's not working, then you need to interact with a, with either with a store or with a contact center, or people go to social media. Is design thinking applied over there as well? Would I love to hear in purely from a customer service angle, not from the just we got good insights of the product design. Would love to hear about that as well.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
So,
if somebody wants to
Soumya,
take it up now or maybe later on. Yeah.
yes. So we have few questions coming in on the CX strategies and user experience that will
Yes.
shoot now. So before we move on to the next question, Soumya Chopra, she's the head CX with Cars 24, wanted to add some value to this point. So Soumya, over to you.
Thanks, Ekta. I just wanted to add what Vishal was talking there, the online and the offline. And I totally agree that tomorrow future will not be one online or offline. There has to be a mojo there. Like generally from a Cast 24 experience, if I tell you, we have been for 4 good years before Corona happened. For 4.5 good years, we believe that customer will come and sell car on our retail stores. We, being a startup, we were 200 plus branches pan India. Very extensive cost model that we were. But post Corona, we went to home inspection model, and we are now catering some customers from 500 to 15,000 over pan India, which we could have even not thought through stores, and that has able to help us recover and growth. So I totally agree. Offline and online needs to be there. And adding to the point what Harman had there, that design thinking does not stop. We made a solution, we made a process. We need to keep improvising. So after we had 5 good experience in cars, right? When we launched two-wheeler vertical, we thought we could just cut, copy, and replicate our models. We could not. We really could not. Even home inspection didn't let us to a process there. We went to online model where customer, you just come 2 minutes or on website, give us a price. And that's what Herman, thanks for pointing it out. We really went to a model. We looked at how Cashify does it. Because for an e-commerce, it's very important for all of us to take learnings from all each of us, because everyone somewhere has a great practice. Like from an e-commerce, I think everyone, just the first name that we all hear is Amazon. Tomorrow you want to buy an X product for your grandma, kids, children, anywhere or anything. You just what do you say, Amazon kar lete hain, let's find it there. And within 2 minutes, the order will be placed. I think looking at that examples and building our products that ways become very easy for us to think what customer think. But like Vishal again said, that when the tech guy comes in, they say, I'm the smarter or you are the smarter, the being the process or the CX owners. I think there what the test, the A/B test, and how do we keep improvising falls in place. Need to understand, empathize, and compassionate are equally important. Vishal, is what I come from. That
True.
empathizing also becomes a very important factor there, because compassionate I'm very compassionate or passionate about the work I do. I want to be part of CX journey every time, every touch point. Like I call it my OCD channel challenge, that every even a hi to a customer will not go until I view it. So that's a
Hmm.
point. But if we don't empathize, by empathizing does not mean I'm comforting customer all the time or I'm just thinking. By empathizing is what at a stage where we are at the discovery stage or something, would actually mean that if I put myself in customer shoes today, right? If I am the
Yeah.
customer today, what would I want? A customer will not be compassionate about Cars 24, Misho, or any other brand that you have today, right? He'll be compassionate or be concerned about what he or she needs it. So that empathy has to start. I think that's the way design thinking, the first step to design is empathy. And I don't deny, compassionate needs to be we as professionals there to be able to elaborate there. So I think that, and Bhavesh, like you had a question, I'm happy when we discuss it further also on the customer service. To be very honest, to a very large of design thinking plays a role in process and product. When you come to customer services or concerns, they come on social media and all. Then also, if I have to ensure that, I will be using design thinking prototype on process and product only. When I go there, there are ways I will not actually call it as a design thinking, because there I'm doing a research. If some process or products breaks in between, what I use, and I'm more than happy if someone else has a different opinion or an experience there. What we actually do is we go talk to customers, do a research team who goes and talk to the customers, go we ourselves act time behavior mystery shoppers or something to understand those gaps. But then when we start building, so then that's the process, we start rebuilding our process and product. There what design thinking has come across, at least what I have worked in or seen the space around. So I don't not too sure how, and more than happy to learn also. Like as a customer service, when we are working on how do we execute design thinking,
Hmm.
that leads us to design thinking is what I believe, or what I've
So,
seen, maybe very small time of career, but yeah, that's what I've seen till now.
so my point of view, Bhavesh, in this is somewhat aligned, somewhat different, a mix of both. So for example, when we talk a subject called interaction design, right?
Hmm.
We talk it in a very limited terms of what happens in the human-computer interaction. But actually, the whole subject of interaction design is anything where two mediums interact with each other. Right now, we have designed this session in such a way that I can see you, I can see Soumya, and I can see a couple of others, and I can see nobody else, right? I can see a lot of question
Hmm.
marks. So there is the interaction happening, which is changing my mood or which is giving me certain impression about it, right? Now, if tomorrow, suppose there was a video running along, it would change my mood slightly, maybe not drastically. I'm not talking about the amount of change. Thereby, when you're doing customer service, for example, we all get pretty bugged up when there are bots, who keep on replying, and then every time they have the same question, the same answer, and the same question, same answer goes on, and then people sort of used, some innovation and said, okay, let me just transfer after 10 seconds of conversation to the real time customer service. right? Tomorrow, that real-time customer service could also probably be an AI-driven, a human face. So thereby, there will be there anywhere there is an observation, there is a design thinking. Anywhere there is an empathy, and I agree with you. I completely agree with Soumya that empathy is so critical. It's just that sometimes I feel we use the word too much, and we don't understand the gravity of the word empathy. We know it all theoretically, but we have so many people who just say empathy, and then in the real life, that's why I felt compassion is a little more
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah,
Word to
I
digest.
totally agree.
Yeah,
By empathy, usually people mean that I have to console someone or comfort someone. That actually it is not empathy at all.
it's also it's like what
That
we
is sympathize.
Yeah,
yeah,
but yeah,
I mean we are
sympathize
all
and empathy are very similar, very like mixed
different.
words that are
Yeah.
used by the people. So that's why I
No,
totally get it when
also I
Vishal
feel
was saying the compassionate.
true. Also, I feel sometimes in the industry, I'm saying all of us, we
Yeah.
have this whole habit of picking up one word like innovation. Everybody says I'm innovation. I walk left to right, I'm innovative, and I move up and down, I'm innovative. So how do you really bring out these meanings in the real life, right? And how does this empathy really come up at any point? And not just when I say interaction design, I was trying to link culture. It's also about how do I link with my employees, right? If I want to make now a new organization, I have to shed off certain principles of mine. And people who are 40 plus like us, and I'm sure a lot of people are not 40 plus in this room right now, people who are 40 plus like this have a difficult problem doing that, because there is so much of wisdom in our brains that we think that wisdom is our asset, which is actually becoming a liability now, which a 15-year-old will not have. So that's the shedding off, and thereby learning new, being open, and thereby that can only happen if you empathize in those minor microseconds, and you observe something which actually can become a great value add for your business model. And that's why I feel empathy can come in any at any point of time.
Yeah, true that. Yes.
So I think
Yeah.
Vishal, it's very interesting the way you have actually said about compassion and empathy, right? So it's basically relatability and the slice of life, right?
Yeah.
While we are actually uh, thinking about building products or whether thinking about experiences in the digital world, uh, it's we are solving and checkboxing, stages and intuitiveness in the people, the mental models people have built, but we
Yes.
are the top layer of slice of life and relatable communication or relatability, that how a person will relate to it, and when a person is communicated through any kind of a brand or product touch points, how they feel, and how eventually that feeling translates into a transaction, right? And make them come back again and again and become and make them feel, okay, this is my brand, and become more relatable to the brand. I think that whole scenario, I think we are on a journey, and a lot of D2C brands are really excelling. They are really doing really fantastic job there, because they are in a small setup. They can actually lead with heart and mind, and there are small teams, right? And they are doing really wonderful job there. I think there's a lot to learn from there, from that side.
I agree. Completely agree. Like if you look at Licious, right? I mean, I'm sure the founder is crazy after non-vegetarian, right? I'm sure he was thinking, chicken and mutton every hour. So till the time you do not have that compassion, you will never understand the real problem. You'll always be on a business plan. And I don't think the D2C is, of course, the business plan adds on, but the operating principle at the beginning is not a business plan. It's about what problem they found and how they can improve and increase the efficiency in that. That's where I think it sort of grows. And yes, I agree. I mean, like as a designer, when I look at doing a website, I would seldom, my mind doesn't think five things at a time. My mind would think like a story. Like I've entered a building, I've opened the door, I've gone into the room, now I'm going. So that's the story, a journey I take, and that's the way I assume my consumer is going to be. Which I mean, in theoretical terms, we call procedural knowledge, rather than a declarative knowledge, which most of the technology guys have, where they can think five things. Probably they're more intelligent, but they can think five things at the same time. I can't. I have to go through a story to understand what happens.
Yes. Okay. Thank you everyone for making this first topic and question so interesting. Now, moving to a second question, basically focusing on the customer acquisition strategy. So now I would like to understand from Priyank Agrawal, Director Marketing with 1MG, Tata 1MG. to speak about his thoughts on strategy that your company adopts to acquire customers. Is it ad, social media campaigns, telemarketing, mobile ads? And how do you guys measure the effectiveness of these strategies? What works well with your organization? So, Priyank, over to you.
Thanks, Ekta. And I have been listening to all the views from the design thinking. And since I honestly not from a design person, I'm not a design guy. So I'm getting a lot of new insights from all of you. Thanks for that. So as far as customer acquisition is considered for any organization, whether it's a big e-commerce organization like Flipkart or Amazon, or a startup like us, or Blasius and all the brands, customer acquisition is very, very important. And to build a base of the customers, good quality customers, I would say, is important for the brand, because brand spends a lot of money to acquire a customer. And once the customer is acquired, every marketeer's dream is that he or she should come organically for the second time. Although it is not, it sounds simple, but it is not that simple. But definitely it, every marketer dreams of that. So what we adopt as a strategy is that we do 360-degree campaigns for the customer acquisition, whether it's branding, whether it's performance marketing, whether it's the CRM part, that is the SMS, push notifications, and all that, whether it's like telesales. So all those things we are doing in Tata 1mg to acquire the new customers. And the effectiveness of the channel basically is judged by that what is the quality of the customer that we acquired. The quality is basically judged by that once a particular customer, suppose that particular customer is acquired by Facebook, then is this customer coming back to us? Is this customer giving us a long, LTV, that is a lifetime value or not? We should not spend money again and again to bring the customer once acquired. So quality of the customer is important when we check the measurement of a particular channel. And also we also measure majorly the major KPIs that we measure is that how much how much money we have spent and how much money the customer has given to us. That means how big is the order of the customer. So there are two types of customers can be. Suppose a customer is only buying a small OTC product of 200 rupees, and there is a customer who is buying a full gamut of medicines for 1,000 rupees. So we will be saying that a person who is buying a full gamut of 1,000 rupees and coming again and again is a good quality customer, and we will give that particular channel more emphasis rather than other particular channels. So these are the strategies, some of the strategies that we get into customer acquisition in Tata 1mg.
Yes. Thank you, Priyank, for sharing your insights. Anything coming in from your end? Bhavish, do you want to add something, or we can move to the next question? You're on mute. Yeah.
It's given a very interesting perspective, Priyank. I think you spoke about multiple channels of marketing. So from Avaya, I've been working with a lot of these e-commerce companies, the Flipkarts and food delivery Swiggies and all of them. So I have seen, what I've seen is that most of these campaigns are running in silos. So yeah, and it is not truly an omni-channel campaign. So while a customer might have done a payment, SMSs are still sent, asking for the reminders, emails are sent. So that is a
This is
loop that we are trying to fix. Try to have
right.
an omni-channel marketing campaign so that once an issue is closed with one channel, the other channel is automatically subdued. So I think the need of the hour is, as you mentioned, telesales. Really run an omni-channel kind of an outbound campaign. So when you have, so what I have seen a lot of these e-commerce companies do is they first launch an SMS. Maybe after a few days they launch an email, and then if it is not done, the agents will call.
Right.
So that it brings a lot of efficiency into
Yeah,
the
yeah.
process.
You have hit on the nail, Bhavish, I would say. So see, some of the channels, this particular strategy is not possible because see, for if you're running a TV ad, now TV attribution is very difficult to attribute. But suppose you are running a TV ad, plus you are also doing Facebook, you're also doing Google, you're also doing mobile marketing, you're also doing affiliate, you're also doing telesales. So I would say entire integrated view of a customer acquired from one particular channel, and then we exclude any communication to that particular customer from all the other channels, is what basically every marketer dreams of. Practically very difficult to get into it, because there are a lot of technical glitches, there are a lot of shortcomings for that. But yeah, that's the thing that one should definitely look upon, and it's a classic case problem of the attribution that we face. Every marketer face, whether it's like brand marketing or it's like performance marketing, growth marketing, every marketer face that. So I think someday we will be able to find out solution, but right now, honestly, I'm not sure about the companies who are able to crack it in a very flawlessly manner, but we are also doing it. There are some certain, I would say, jugards that we are doing. But yeah, if you ask me that whether there is any way of flawlessly attributing a particular customer to a particular channel and then excluding that particular customer communication from all the other platforms or channels, honestly not possible as if now.
I think
Yeah.
it's practically to an extent, Bhavesh, like Priyank rightly said, it's very difficult to attribute, and especially from a TV ad or someone who's come on Facebook. Right now, I search something on Google. For next 2 days, you will find it everywhere on your phone, everywhere on your social media, everywhere you log in or do something, you'll find that particular thing. So removing entirely is very difficult, and then telesales, TV ads attribute to a very different type of a customer altogether. And I think the major issue of telesales that I'm sure all of us faces is, and LinkedIn gives it a reality check when customer come and abuses, there is the D&Ds. We're not able to do that as well so flawlessly here. And especially, I'll tell you from my experience, India has been, we love talking on phone also, but when customer calls thrice or four, customer service calls thrice or four times to the customer, I will hate that company forever. My
Yeah.
mind will be stuck there only, that oh, this is a horrible company. But once you
Correct.
launch outside, so like I'll tell you, Middle East, we just launched Middle East, it's a very different perspective. They are okay that you WhatsApp them 10 times, they will not have any issue at all. But for them, the major thing is trust. For India, the trust to an extent matters, but trust could be that I trust you, you trust him. For there, they need to trust the brand. For which we actually had to spend, like 2 days ago, I'm not too sure, a lot of people might have seen, we actually had to go to Khalifa to launch our Cars 24 in UAE. So for them, that matters. But India specifically, telesales, we can't get away with it also, because that provides growth to the businesses. But that's a, again, trade-off that you do. How do you market between your business and experience?
Yeah, no, I think that's a correct point. I think what I have seen is, you can't link TV ads with telesales. That I
Yeah,
totally agree. But
yeah,
within telesales also, I think most of these e-commerce companies and even banks, they are not
yeah,
there in the panel. They outsource. So the outsourcer
yeah.
keeps running the campaign. So there are solutions available. Maybe we can discuss where you can actually control especially on the telesales and running an omni-channel campaign. So once a campaign is run on one channel and it has been closed, you can the agent and the
Of course,
campaign
makes
manager
sense.
knows, that it is we don't need
Yeah.
to run that campaign again. Yeah, fine. I think I just wanted
Yes.
to put that point. Thanks,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Ekta. Please, yeah.
Yes. So thank you, Soumya and Priyank, for sharing your thoughts. Now, moving
Mhm.
to the next question, we will focus on the CX strategy. So first, I would like to have Himanshu Gupta again from Head Design with Farm Easy. He was gonna focus on the loyalty programs. The question is like, what's the should be the company's CX strategy? Does COVID impact the strategy? Is it purely online, omni-channel, in-store, mobile apps? So how do you measure the CX here, like on a surveys or a loyalty programs? So over to you, Himanshu, to share your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Ekta. So, when it comes to UX strategy, right, there are the three key things, right, one needs to look at purely from an online, omni-channel, or in-store, any of these point of view. But I'll specifically emphasizing on the online side of the world. The first is how likely your users or consumers are going to recommend you and buy goods or services from you in the future. That is the first thing you need to look at. The second important thing you need to look at customer queries, which are coming from different channels, right? How satisfied your customer is from your product. And the third key thing is getting a score of CES, customer effort score, right? It varies from strongly agree to disagree, right? Where they stand in terms of using any platform, right? Vis-a-vis it's an offline service or an online platform, buying something, enrolling for something, right? One thing or the another. So I'll emphasize on these 3 points first, and then I'll talk about some of the metrics we look at, and every business needs to look at to excel on CX, customer experience, so to say. The first thing is net promoter score, right? Like I said, how likely your consumer user is going to recommend you, right? uh, uh, NPS is the most common customer experience metric. It's easy to understand, quick to complete, and gives a very big picture on a customer loyalty. Right? You might have seen receiving a, a review or a pop up showing up on a screen on your screen, a mobile phone or a web platform, asking, hey, did you like the experience, right? How likely you would like to recommend this to others, one thing or the another, right? These are this is one of the ways to gather such information. The second is and build a better experience. Second is, like I said, understanding customer queries at channel level, right? Where it is coming from and why it is coming from, whether it is coming from a self-serve bot or there is a bot which is answering to the human queries, or whether it is a human interaction via call, chats, written communication, past experience of the customer specific to this query, or any kind of a query which comes under this bucket area, or throughout this entire journey. We look at it not just from a quantitative point of view, but also from a qualitative point of view, to understand how end user is perceiving the problem, right? So let's say if user is saying, where is my order, right? You can simply tell them what the status is, but you need to understand why this question arises, right? At what state this question arises, right? What kind of communication you have done so far to improve the customer experience, to give them visibility, right? Bring transparency, right? Your experience needs to be like a glass, right? I can see through it. Same way customers should be able to see through the process. They don't need to understand what you are doing, how your e-commerce work, how your warehouses works, and how you pick pack things and ship it up, doing first mile, last mile. They don't want to understand it. And even as a consumer, we are not very much emphasizing on these areas, right? For us, the more important part is whether I got what I want or not, right? And what makes uh, uh, one experience better than other is how delightful and how easy to use this entire experience is. Gone through this entire journey, it could be registering for a online examination, or one thing or the another, or buying something, or enrolling for a service, or going to let's say you are uh, going through in a large place like IKEA or a big bazaar, right? For that matter. Uh, the third thing is customer effort score, where you build something and you think this is going to impact, right? So, for example, bringing some visibility on, let's say, B2B side, where your order is, right? On the for the retailers or for any kind of small businesses, right? And you think this is going to impact their life a lot, right? This is going to bring some visibility. This is going to add some delight there. So you are going to ask very clear questions. For example, whether you find it easy or not, right? Were you able to look at these aspects or not, right? So you gather these information on a whether they agree or not. There are certain nuances, but generally it tends towards either yes or a no. Uh, there are other metrics, I believe, one needs to look at, right? For example, customer churn rate, right? How likely are you to remain with us? Understanding these nuances from a consumer point of view. Purchase loyalty, meeting expectations. Waiting time also plays a very key role. Why all these platforms are moving from self-serve model, where you can go and find for a question which you're looking for, similar to what we do on Google, right? If we have a query, we simply write it down and just look for answers, or the information we are looking for. Similar way, the companies have been moving to such kind of tools where you are creating a hierarchy of content, right? How this entire information is flowing, right? And nudging users towards these entry points and question areas where you understand, okay, this is what is exactly happening, right? And they are moving to bots and all these things because they know that if there is an issue, right, if everyone start calling, right, let's say if my product is my website is down, right, or something or the another is not happening. For example, when the first lockdown hit us last year somewhere around March, right, lot of e-commerce delivery stopped, right, lot of essentials delivery stopped. Even on the healthcare side also we have seen so many challenges, right, moving shipments from one place to another, right? So one cannot rely purely on a telecommunication to answer each and every customer query or question, right? And the last but not the least important part is uh, uh, finding these things on from an online assessing these things from an online point of view, right? How is it easy it was to find what they are looking for, right? If they are looking for, let's say, X thing, whether it's a needs based thing, want based thing, and how you are surfacing those informations to end users through different channels, binding them together. Yep, that's it.
Yes, thank you. Achyuta, you wanted to make a point, if I'm pronouncing a name properly.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. So, just wanted to make an interesting point. When we look at customer loyalty, right, and in product tech we also say retention. I think it also depends on the scope and the frequency of how our customers are coming and interacting and seeing the needs, right? So, let's take an example of something like Phone Pay, right, where Harmant is here. So, I think he can empathize that how many times the user would use the product, right, within a day to another extent of say Meesho, where we would occasionally buy the products, but there's a level of frequency which is much higher. To a comparison of Cars 22, where it may not be as frequent, right? That I would interact and engage with Cars 24. In each of these parts, customer experience could be looked at in very different angles. And one way is that yes, we could look at the NPS, we could understand the voice of the user, they could get feedback on their experience, right? And you could look at all these metrics and data. The other way of understanding loyalty and retention can be how do we understand their motivations and behaviors across people, right? Understand the psychological sort of common motivations and bring that hook to get them on board. So one of the things which we experimented in Meesho was this entire gamification, right? We got all the users to gamify their experience. So Flipkart has this whole coin method, but we had these whole point method, but the points were gamified completely that user was so engaged on the app anyways, where they were spending much more time. Then we could figure out ways of hook of engaging them much more, and that engagement turned into retention, the retention turned into loyalty. So there are interesting ways, and this is another example of design thinking, lateral thinking, right? How do you think out of the box in getting some of your customers to engage with you again and again? It really depends. So Oyo is another example where I might have a very high frequency of need, but it could also be occasional. So how do you, and also their touch points are multiple, right? It's offline and online. So there could be very interesting other requirements, but I think design thinking, when we say, right, and understanding that customer experience is in manifold, and it requires us to push ourselves to look at not just data and metrics, which I do think is very, very important and helpful, but also understanding human psychology.
Thank you so much. Now, can I quickly invite Anirban Chakraborty, Head Digital E-commerce with Wellness Forever Medicare, to share his thoughts.
Sure. Thanks, Ekta. So yeah, I've been hearing all the esteemed speakers, and like Future Group, we are also mainly a brick and mortar player with foray into our online space. So in nutshell, we are omni-channel hyper-local. That's how we want to call ourselves, because we have our stores and we believe our radius of influence is 6 kilometers around the stores. So interestingly, when the pandemic hit, we were in midst of our digital transformation to move online. So overnight, our design thinking was, how do you get customers who are coming to our stores to now buy through, say, a T-com channel, or through the app, which was newly launched app, and continue business with us. And of course, WhatsApp was one of the major areas there. So what we did was that as a functional thinking, our idea was that we wanted to serve the customer within 2 hours of their placing the order. So we worked backwards. We said that what is the customer who has been coming to our store giving instant gratification would now what we have to do to retain that customer in the age where we cannot he or she cannot now directly walk into the stores. So what we did is that we said that what we'll do is that the moment he places the order, we will work our entire processes, design the entire processes that within 2 hours the medicine will be delivered, medicine or whatever would be delivered to the doorstep. With that being what we thought was going to be our USP, we work backwards as a part of every step in the process to the point, working backwards to the kind of customer persona we have to target. So we before we get into that, so we sell through app, we sell through stores, T-com, WhatsApp, and micro franchises. So everybody had a different customer persona. Now with the channels being restricted with the stores and the micro franchisee, we quickly worked that how would our entire experience to the customer be when he or she is placing the order online from now only walking into the store, so that not only the person gives the same level of experience or same level of comfort he or she had been coming, because we had a very extremely loyal customer base. We still continue to have an extremely high repeat customer base, and we hardly spent before that anything on marketing. We hardly required marketing before that, because the word of mouth was the year. So our challenge in thinking through the processes in designing was that how the customer gets the same feel, same comfort, and instant gratification when it comes to the online channels. And towards that end, like we worked out policies like you can pick up pick up from the store but return online, or buy online and return at the store. You can go to one store to the other store without and you can return products. And we also, and I was hearing about that omni-channel single view of customers. So we worked on that. We really worked on that. So we have, for our stores or for our app, for our telesales, and whoever not, we have a single view of the customer. So if you have ever walked into a wellness store and you have ever purchased anything, we will know you that when you come to the app with the same phone number. But all our customers, which is close to 6 to 7 million odd, we know what they purchased, where they come from, which channel they came from, and entire campaigns, including our digital marketing campaigns to the telesales campaigns, is designed around that and feeds into the same base. So that is something which quickly we did, because we realized that was the need of the hour, to retain customers in an age where they are flooded with digital ads, they're flooded with multiple options on the app. And also one of the things which we did for customer retention, which can be called controversial, but we figured out that and two of our esteemed friends are here, Farmeasy and Tata 1mg. So we figured out that even if the customer is walking to the store today, tomorrow he might not, because he might have got the two other apps, competitor apps on the phone. So we also, unlike others, we actively pursued a strategy where we gave all our customers, started giving all our high value customers at least our app on the phone, so that they can see the entire record of purchases, repeat orders, everything which they have even done from the store. So that when the time comes when they install the other two apps, we are also a choice to them, and we do not lose them permanently. And to speak here, that has really worked for us a lot. So for me, see, design thinking is fine. One is that, of course, it's a subjective, a qualitative, subjective area. For us, it was more required as a need of the hour, that where we had to improvise almost overnight from a brick and mortar to omni-channel hyper-local player, and where we took care of the fact that, okay, the customers' ease of use and all. But we figured out two things. One is instant gratification, and the second is reliability. Whatever medicine you deliver is reliable. It's much above expiry date, much above, yeah, and then the customer automatically comes back without spending too much on retention. In terms of new customers, quickly, again, as I said, digital channels have worked great, but so have our in-store campaigns and our campaigns around the store. As I said, the radius of influence being 6 kilometers. Now we have gradually increased. Earlier, the footfall used to be only from a 2 kilometer pre-COVID. Now we have orders coming from up to 6 kilometers. A lot of orders coming in the 4 to 6 kilometers radius, which was earlier not there, and that's where we see a lot of play in the omni-channel hyperlocal. So that's what I wanted to touch upon, because I've been hearing all the esteemed players on different points. I thought I will collate all of them and put it out.
Yes. Thank you.
Anirban, one
Thank
uh,
Yeah,
uh,
tell me.
Anirban, one thing. When you said, very interestingly, you said, you know a person by person's phone number from one channel to another, omni-channel
Yeah,
approach. Would like to understand. I just would like to ask one thing, because this is where we also struggle. Because PhonePe as a super app, a person who is coming for a recharge, and if the same person is going to tomorrow invest in gold, and if I want to target the same customer, tomorrow now start a mutual fund SIP. These are very three different categories, right? So
right,
inherent motivation for all three different categories is going to be super different from each other. So
right.
and if we bucket the person into a similar behavioral patterns, and put him or her into a one cohort, it becomes very difficult to understand their intrinsic motivation to uh, you know uh, go and perform different transaction for different category. Have you guys really able to solve this for yourself?
Yeah, yeah. So I'll tell you. So see, for whatever if what for you is three different ways, like mutual funds or recharge or EA, is categories for us: medicines, FMCG, and personal care. Because we are a mix of a Nykaa plus Pharmacy, yes, Pharmacy, and not a big basket for that matter. So again, the intrinsic reason why people shop with us is different. So the same person may not be the one who is buying a healthcare product to somebody buying a lifestyle product. So what we have done is that we understand people always don't buy it for themselves, but the phone number will be one. They are always also buying for the family members. And you in India, people buy for family. You do not have different accounts. So that's one. Secondly, from a cohorting level, we have worked backwards. So once the person has come in, the person can fall in different persona cohorts based on certain information which we have, that what he or she might have bought over the time, and what are the products, because certain products have a certain amount of tagging. That say a Pampers regularly bought always indicates a new baby in the family. It might not be the person's baby; it's a new baby in the family. Plus a medicine which is, and the same person might be buying a medicine which is for the old age. So what we did is that we worked backwards. We made personalized what persona based cohorts, and then the same person can see. We have only one number, right? We are not seeing the person here, but we can say that okay, this person has certain behavioral characteristics which allows him to fall in more persona, and based on that we drive the campaigns and then see the result.
Thank you, Anirban.
Thanks.
So, for your sharing your insights. So, we have one more speaker who has still not spoken on any of his insights. Vidya Rana Bharadwaj. He's the head of design with Herman Miller. So, Vidya Rana, your thoughts on this, please. Something about the topic that you would like to share.
Sure, sure. Thank you, Ekta. Very interesting discussions and uh, varied insights into topics with the kind of varied industries that people are from, and what is customer experience for everybody. So I'll briefly talk about how Herman Miller has adapted its ways, and how the company is looking at this transition where people have started to move from a physical space to a virtual space. So Herman Miller essentially being a furniture company, and more so the primary product range being the office furniture range. It took a bit of time for the company to actually transition into that, but they were kind of leaders in realizing that there needs to be a virtual mode of selling as well. So and I think the first step was to look at how a contract based selling would transition into a retail based selling, and then how a retail based selling would transition into a online selling. So and selling something online, something like a furniture piece, is a bit of a challenge, because that is something that you want to touch and feel and see the color, the finish, the material, and everything. And that's traditionally how everybody's been buying furniture. But now, with these changing times where everybody is at home and everybody wants the best furniture for themselves, so it kind of paved the way to a lot of new technologies in these areas. So a lot of experimentation has started to happen on how augmented reality can actually enable in selecting of the right piece of furniture piece for an environment. So it has gone beyond just the very basic, where you have a furniture piece on the phone and you put it in the environment and see what it looks like. It can do a lot more, and you can actually design and have a thinking of what that space can be. So you can actually visualize the space and visualize the furniture at the same time while you are buying a piece of furniture. So that's something which is happening every and there are companies who there's a race against time with people who actually design these tools. So companies like Chaos, Unreal Engine, and a lot many companies are working on ways in which like a three-dimensional model can be viewed on the computer in a cloud format, where a designed space becomes more than just an animation or a rendered visualization output. It becomes much more than that. So we've seen things like that happen in the gaming industry, but happening in the furniture and the real estate sector is something which is the first of its kind that has happened in these times. So talking about augmentation of augmented experience, I think I'll talk about how customer experience has been changing and what seems to be a future of it, and I'll give a couple of examples of things that I've seen. So and we could further talk about it. So I mean, augmented experience, like from a real estate perspective, is something which is comparatively new in the industry. I would say it's been about 5 to 10 years since we've actually started to see augmentation. But there have been other companies who've done this for a while and they've done it successfully. Rolex being one of them, where on the site you can actually see what the watch is, you can see what it looks like on your wrist, and you can explore, experiment. Lenskart being the other one, which has become quite popular of late due to their 3D mapping of the face, and that's what their selling point has been, and it's enabled them to actually go beyond what the competition was doing. Uh, but I feel that although everybody gets a dopamine rush where you select a product on an e-commerce site and you purchase it and you have a rush, but there's always this human tendency to see what it actually feels like. So there's always a transition that needs to be there, where you uh, where the experience become changes from an intangible experience to a tangible experience. And a couple of companies have successfully done that, where their intangible interface experience has actually transitioned into a space where it has enabled the tangible experience and vice versa. So one good example in this would be Nike. So Nike has an app which tracks everything that one is doing, right from how much you're running, what is your cadence, are you how fast are you running, what is your speed, a lot of data they collect. Okay. And uh, if you go on the Nike site after that and you use the data that you already have, and a brand like Nike has a loyal customer base. So if somebody is using Nike for running, there's a high probability that the person is going to use the same brand for a shoe when they buy next. And when they buy next, the company can give them suggestions based on their observations and the data that they've collected. So actually, it enables the person to firstly realize that there is value in the amount of data that the person is giving out, and is benefited in the long run. So the company builds a connect with the user. So the customer and seller bond is something that we all talk about, and how to take it to the next level, and how it can become better, uh, and how it can enable a better selling experience. uh, Another thing that has become very popular now, and is something that the future is going to see more and more, is how social media is going to uh, be a medium where the e-commerce selling is going to happen. So it's actually gone beyond the Facebook marketplace or Shopify or places like that. Now it's become like a state where social media influencers who were actually like promoting products earlier, now on their live stream they're actually selling products. So and the whole system has been set up where there are people who got millions of followers, and they promote a product and they're selling it then and there. So and there'll be more and more innovations in things like this, I think. And another example of how social media and e-commerce are kind of getting together is what we see when the largest e-commerce one of the largest e-commerce chain, Walmart, is planning to buy stakes in TikTok. So if they are making that move, then obviously there is something that has is going to be a bigger connect and a bigger selling platform than just an e-commerce website where you place a bunch of products and people click on it and buy it. So it's got to be more and more now. And I feel that even after we are through with COVID, and there is virtual and real, and both of them exist in parallel, still the influence of what the virtual world is doing in what the real world is experiencing is going to be more now than ever before. And in this direction, I think companies will have to adapt, they'll have to change, and they'll have to see what the customer really wants, get into the requirement of the customer. And if they have to get into the requirement of the customer, they'll have to like see everything that the customer is doing. Another example that I want to talk about here is how Disney is looking at data. And they've been doing data analytics for quite some time. And off late, what they've started to do is, like, the moment you enter the theme park, you get a band, and every ride or every joyride and uh, every theatrical experience that you enter into, there are sensors that track your joy. How happy are you in a certain space, how much time do you spend on a certain space, and that enables them to create the next theme center better than before, where you know exactly what people want. And over a period of time, when they are able to collect this data, uh, data is the king. So that's the kind of things that people have started to do. And so so one part is to understand what the customer wants, and the other part is to understand what the customer wants in that particular moment. And that's where people like Spotify or Netflix and all that, they've been recommending the right kind of suggestions while you're driving, while you're studying and all that. But there's one more step that companies have tried to do, which is preempting what the customer would want. And that is something which will be a driving force in the future. And data is obviously going to be uh, the most important thing that will enable companies to decide on these things. And another example that I want to talk about is Kone lifts. So they have sort of worked on a very efficient way of preempting what the customer might want. So they have a system where they see how many cycles would the lift run, and how much after how many cycles would they need a service, or how many cycles would they need the replacement, or when would a part stop working. So all those data that they collect, and even before things like that were to happen, their executive is there. And the customer service in companies that figure out data analytics from that perspective is way better than companies who would wait for something to go wrong and then react to it. So the days of customer service and customer happiness is going to change. People have started to expect a lot more now. I mean, pre-industrialization, every piece of clothing or every piece of uh, thing that you would buy would be customized for you. So you were in a way, the gratification level was much higher than what happened after post-industrialization. The costs went down and all that happened. But now it's going back to a point where everybody wants a customized experience in how they want to select a product and how they want to use a product. And when companies start to do that, they kind of, a lot of times people like us, we cross a fine line between building a customer relationship and kind of invading onto the privacy of what the of the customer. So that's why we see that there are so many calls, there are so many unnecessary messaging, there is so much of communication, useless communication, that is sent out by companies. So uh, and it's people like us who can think and kind of calibrate on what is the right amount of communication that needs to go out. So I think that's what would be the future of things. So thank you. I
Thank
think I
you.
have exceeded my time, but thank you so much.
No problem. So we are already running out of time, but we still have three important factors to cover. I would request all speakers to quickly cover those points. One is we'll focus on analytics, employee productivity, and the use of automation, which Bhavish is going to cover. So coming to analytics, I would like to have inputs from Priyank Agrawal and Soumya Chopra. Like how is analytics used to improve CX according to you? Like, are there different systems? Do you analyze web clicks, mobile app usage, call recording? What are your thoughts? So over to you, Priyank, to share your thought, and then we come to Soumya.
I'll keep it very brief and short. So, how do we judge customer experience through analytics? So, data is a fuel for every business. So, first of all, we judge the NPS part, obviously, that whether the customer is happy or not, and whether the things are up to the mark for the customers. Secondly, we also see the delivery times, whether what we committed and what we have delivered is matching or not. If we have, suppose we are committing like 5 hours of delivery and we are doing it for 7 hours, that means we are breaching it. And sometimes it's a wow factor for the customer, that when it is getting, after we are saying 5 hours, but the delivery is on 4 hours. Third point is that, which I am not doing, obviously the operations team is doing, is that on a weekly basis, they get into the the analysis of the call dumps that the customer is calling onto the call center, and they understand how was the customer experience, how much was the complaint, what was the complaint type. So they bucketize, which we call it as a disposition. They do a lot of bucketization of the complaints, and then they take a corrective action over the product. So these are the key things on the analytics where we judge the customer experience and how it is doing. Apart from that, from marketing perspective, we are thinking, or we are judging we are seeing the data for the retention. If the retention, or the, I would say, the repeat rate is going up, so that means customers are happy with us, and once the customer is acquired, it is coming back to us. Also, we are looking at the LTV part. What is LTV? Once a customer is acquired, whether it's coming back to us and it's giving the value to us or not. Coming back is not only the objective. Giving the value to the companies is necessary. So these are the few analytics parameters that we look upon.
Okay. Soumya, your thoughts, please?
Yes. I think Priyank to an extent covered everything there, but yes, analytics is very important for us as experienced team. Although everything does not land up into those datas and numbers like it does for business, we are not that lucky ones that everything will boil down to numbers and everything. In the end, the call hearing and actually going talking to the customer is what helps us with the data. But the first cut to it is what we usually do is that probably the NPS code, there's one section is detractors. We call detractors ourselves. We call detractors and talk to them and understand what was the root cause problem there. Rather than I showing that they had an issue with X issue, because the dispositions might be just 3 or 4 and the rest fall in others. So NPS became there, and then customer effort score. I think one of the person even talked about customer effort score, but how I actually look at the customer effort score is that how much time you spend rather than the satisfaction. I asking customer, I think Himanshu covered it. I asking customer how much do you like the experience of buying and everything. For us, when I look at the, or maybe we at cars look at the customer effort score, how do we look at is how many times customer had to come to our website or application to book a particular car. And when he finally made that order, what was an average time? Because that's what I would want to make a least effort. Like we transferred, like for 5 years we were someone who were buying cars. Now we are selling cars to the customer. In that platform, I need to, when I say that we are branding or marketing ourselves as like you can order a car at a matter of click, I need to sure it actually is at a click. Within 2 minutes, my order is placed, payment is done, and we are delivering the car. But yes, at every stage, the data cuts analysis come in. But what we were initially talking, the empathize or the compassionate part, that only comes with the human touch when we talk to the customer, understand ourselves, or be part of that customer journey ourselves. That's our quarterly and weekly plan that we have for all the leaders in the organization, that we make them talk to the customer. There are times that we even visit with our team members to the customer place for particular type of the journey, so that they know what the team is going through, because we sitting at head offices and everything does not deliver that experience. It's actually the team there. So till the time they are not able to associate with that term called experience, because I think for a lot of us, experience stays as NPS only, like not at professionals, but when you look at the leaders and it, they say, well, how's the NPS going? That's exactly not the experience score. Exactly, there's a lot to it. So working with the teams, help them, people on ground, the drivers or the delivery boys or everyone, helping them understand what is experience is the key job. And I think I am also learning and trying to understand how I tell them that why is experience important, because for them getting two more orders or delivering two more orders is more priority, because we give them incentive. For experience, there is no excitement, there's just a smile on the customer's face. So, but yes, never said and done. We can't get off data the way the e-commerce is expanding. If we go into the manual touch, we will never be able to help our customers for sure.
Thank you. Uh, Now, I would like to invite Bhavesh Shora to share his thoughts on use of AI and automation, like adoption of artificial intelligence, ML. Is it a myth, and how are you automating your sales process? So, Bhavesh, over to you.
Yeah, Ekta, I think I'll make it very short. I think we have already overshot. I just want to make two quick points. I think good insights from Soumya and Priyansh on analytics. I wanted to add just one thing. Uh, I think analytics is very, very crucial. And I think we are from Avaya, we are working with a lot of these e-commerce companies, mainly on the customer service angle. Many of these large companies, whether you see PhonePe or you Flipkart, Swiggy, all of them, Paytm and all, they have hundreds and thousands of agents. If you see these edtech, the Byju's and they're like, they have thousands and thousands of agents. They're making a lot of hundreds of telephony calls every day, right? And I think at the end of the day, the voice of the customer, you need to hear the voice of the customer to understand what is really happening in the organization. So for a long time, what companies have been doing is, they record these calls, and on randomly, maybe 1 to 2% of the recordings you hear, there's a quality team which hears the recordings and it understands, okay, this is what is happening in the organization, and that is used to give feedback to the agents and even understanding what are the trends, customer issues and all. But that is, today it is not enough, right? Today there are tools available called analytics, speech analytics, which can go into 100% of the recordings, 100% of the email transcripts, 100% of the chat transcripts, and it'll give you very, very valuable insights at the end of the day itself. So, like things like happening, that suddenly there is a lot of conversations where says, deliveries are getting delayed, or, there are a lot of chats. So, I mean, a quality analysis would happen after 4 to 5 days or maybe after a week. It is too late. But this kind of trends can be picked up immediately in a few hours or 24 hours. And the team knows, okay, maybe there is an issue in the supply chain. Why the deliveries are getting delayed. Suddenly the word delay in delivery has been spoken, maybe 20 times more today compared to last week. So those kind of things is happening in the industry. Analytics plays a very, very powerful role over there. Quickly on automation, I want to touch upon before I wind up. I think automation in customer service has been happening for a very, very long time. And I'll again talk about my own experience working with startups, e-commerce, banks, telecom operators. It is touching all aspects. If I look at the agent, if a call center agent who's taking hundreds of calls every day, each person, like if I am Bhavish, I say, thank you for calling, maybe Flipkart, how can I help you? I mean, I'm going to repeat it 100 times. Today, we are giving the capability for the agent to record it once on the soft phone and for every call, the system will play it out. It adds a lot of efficiency into the system, So I think the simplest way of automation is just an automated personal greeting. Okay. If I look at AI, I think somebody, I think maybe Achyut or Himanshu spoke about voice, having issues with the voice transcripts. Today, AI, while it is still very nascent in the customer service design, but it automatically improves, and I think today we have speech bots in regional languages, whether it is Hindi, English, Gujarati, Tamil, Malayalam. There are 8 to 10 regional languages it is available. And what is happening is it is very successful in identifying the intent of the caller, okay, and understanding what is the words that are spoken. And it is automatically improving over time. Same thing is happening on bots. Most of the bots, I think it's just like an FAQ. You answer a few questions and it terminates. It doesn't really go to an agent. The bots are automatically learning on their own, identifying what is happening, and helps in a resolution. I think looking at the time, these are the two three things which I wanted to talk about. Yeah, I think, and I'll wrap up over there. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
thank
I
you,
just wanted
Bhavesh.
to add, sorry, I just wanted to add one thing, Bhavesh.
Yes,
I
please,
think
please
Yes.
go ahead.
voice assistant and speech text, I will send you a video
Mm.
where, Microsoft Research Lab, Google is doing a lot of work in understanding text, voice, comprehension. And we are far, far behind for what we are doing right now. Comprehension of languages are not that easy. Native language spoken to a natural language spoken, how do you transliterate and translate? There are other versions of translation which are not comprehensible by our users. So I think this requires far more nuanced approach, which is why we are also closely tracking, right, what Google and other players are doing, which even Flipkart, Meesho, Amazon is very carefully thinking through where the
Mm.
integration is possible, where it could also create more friction than a more seamless experience for our customers. And I think that's an important thought for all of us to reflect. Thanks so much.
That's true. That's true. I think it is improving. I think a lot of language recognition has happened only in the West. I think North America has mastered it. Western Europe has mastered it. We have a lot of startups. Even Google is focusing on Indian languages big time. But yeah, it is taking time, but it is improving. There are a lot of customers using it,
Yeah,
but
they're far
yeah,
from there. I think that's
yeah,
where they're heavily investing because our
yes.
languages are very diverse, dialects, how pronunciations differ. It's far more complex, and
Also,
that's
Achyut,
where
I think
it'll be
it's
interesting.
also about Achyut, this is also about the maturity of the market. I think we are at a point where we are right now looking at a transactional value because there are multiple players. It's a new medium. COVID has accentuated it. I don't know if you guys have read the news 2 days back about China, right? The government cracked upon most of the ed tech and the internet companies because, according to the government, there's no value in that. They're not creating any real value. They're just creating a sort of an upsurge. So they're looking at like a deep tech as a real value rather than the e-commerce, ed tech, and other things. So I think ultimately, in our case, being a democracy, we will find our own value, right? And ultimately, the consumer will decide that where am I getting the real value, and that's where I think the whole subject of design, as a design thinking, or as a point of flag off for innovation, is going to be very important because design thinking would only hunt for value creation, right? Not the incremental value, because that's something which the market plays on. So what next is going to be in the so-called blue ocean red ocean theory? What is going to be the next? That's going to be the crux out here, because right now most of the models we follow, what we see in the West, we replicate quickly and make it, whether selling books or selling anything. I think we are looking for some breakthroughs, and we are seeing some trends in the D2C market out here, but bigger things are yet to come. I strongly believe in that.
Thank you so much, everyone. So, do we have somebody on the closing note? Just wrap anyone of you, and then I wrap it up on a close. Bhavesh, are we done?
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I think
Okay.
it's already 5:25. We have shot up by
Yes.
25
Okay.
minutes.
No problem.
I think people are interested. I think they're still
Yes,
there.
it was an
Yeah,
interesting
yeah.
session. So, on this closing
Thank
note,
you.
of course, I would like to thank our partner Avaya and all the thought leaders. You took out your precious time being here. I know there was a hard stop for people at 5. Somebody were in a meeting since morning, but you guys made it. Thank you so much. And I hope you all guys had a great session. We'll share the entire video with you by Monday. And we also have shared a feedback form, just to have an understanding how did the roundtable go, and which also mentions about one-on-one brainstorm session with Avaya. And if you're interested to know more about Avaya, we'll be happy to connect with you with them. So please follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter for the webinar and updates. Thank you once again, everybody. Please take care, stay safe, and bye bye. Have a nice
Thank you.
weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
once again,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye bye.